No more cameramen, huh?
Hello, my name is Dean Contover. This is the Current Buzz. Today we have a gentleman that everyone knows, most everyone knows in town. He's the police chief of Chelmsford, Massachusetts. James Spinney, or Jim, they call you,
Yeah,
right?
Jim's fine.
Jim's fine.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I appreciate it. I have some sad news. I have some sad news to tell you. Jim is going to be no longer police chief. He's retiring on May 31st. How many years have you been police chief?
So 8.5 years here.
8.5 years. Wow. That is a long time, isn't it, for a police chief?
Yeah, so 8.5 years as chief, 32.5 years total. So in today's environment, 8.5 is more than most. I think you're seeing more like in the range of 5 now.
Is that right?
Yep.
5 and out? Is that right?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Do we know who the new police chief is?
No, we don't, but the town manager is going through a testing procedure.
Okay.
It will be an internal candidate.
Oh, it will be internal.
It will be
Okay.
a member of the Chelmsford Police Department's
Why is that?
command staff.
Why is
Well, frankly, if we had to go outside, I would consider it a failure on my part.
Oh, good
because
point.
That means that we haven't done the proper delegation and training and succession planning that is required. So I made it a point when I became chief to make sure that we were set up in such a way that there'd be someone within the department that could take over. So we have 3 candidates that have put in for the chief's position,
Okay.
and the town manager has set up some testing procedures with some outside consultants, and that testing, I believe, begins the 1st of next week.
Wow, okay. Let me ask you a question. Can a patrolman or a sergeant apply for being a police chief?
No, so our requirements are, you have to be a member of the command staff,
Okay.
and you have to hold the rank of lieutenant, at least the rank of lieutenant, for a minimum of 3 years, and you have to have been a supervisor for at least 10.
I see. Okay.
And that's the minimum requirement.
Yeah, I like to go. I'm going to bring up some old things for you in regards to police, being the police chief and being on the police force in Chelmsford for over close to 30 years, right?
Yep.
So, do you remember the call boxes that used to be on the telephone poles, and you'd have to call in?
It's funny. I remember seeing them like really on TV. I remember the fire call boxes
Right.
were actually just removed a year or 2 ago.
Yeah, exactly.
The police call boxes were before my time. That was in an era that there was no cruiser radios. So, but the fire call boxes, really up until just recently, were still active.
Yeah, I know. They took the boxes but didn't take down the foundations.
Yeah, they left the stands.
Yeah, they left the stands.
Yeah, it's not the best looking.
No, it isn't. And maybe the fire chief should check that out. Let's talk about some other things that weren't illegal when you were a police chief. Marijuana, right? Cannabis.
Right.
I like to call it cannabis. That's the official. Chelmsford doesn't have a cannabis store. It doesn't raise cannabis. And what's your feeling now in regards to that?
Well, I think back at the beginning of my career, we expended so many resources towards marijuana, restricting it, and arresting people for it, possession of it, sales of it. Of course, now it's legal in Massachusetts to possess it.
It was voted in by the people.
Right. And as far as the dispensaries go, I was initially opposed to Chelmsford having a dispensary because I was concerned there was a lot of unknowns.
Yeah,
there was a lot of unknowns
That's
with the
true.
dispensaries, how it was going to affect traffic, quality of life for the neighbors. So I spoke at town meeting about those concerns.
I remember
and
that.
I just didn't want Chelmsford to be really a test case.
I think it was smart on your part.
That's why it wasn't just myself. I know the Board of Health Director, Sue Rosa, was opposed to it, as well as others, and it was overwhelmingly rejected at town meeting. Now today, fast forwarding to today, as you know, there's dispensaries all around us. Mm-hmm. If Chelmsford was to, change course and allow a dispensary in town, I think there's a lot more knowledge out there I don't think it would have some of the serious ramifications that we once thought, as long as it's done properly and a proper part of town was selected. So I think as long as you look at it slowly and methodically and carefully, it can be done.
Purple just had a second cannabis store open up. Drake has 2 or 3. And I was wondering why all these towns have 2 or 3. I mean, do they support something like that? And people told me, well, people come across the border from New Hampshire to buy.
Yeah,
and,
I know Tingsboro, the locations they picked in Tingsboro are right near the New Hampshire border, so it's really lucrative. I've heard some rumors that New Hampshire might be legalizing it in the not too distant future, so that'll obviously play into it.
Okay.
Yeah, each town has the choice. I know there's a tax revenue formula for the dispensaries, so it can benefit communities.
Right. Do you arrest people? Is there an underground marijuana thing going on?
No, very little now.
Okay.
It's really more just about education now.
Okay.
We have detectives in the schools still talking to the students about the concerns with, obviously opiates,
Right.
and all types of drugs that can affect you and have a negative effect on your life. So that our big thing is really prevention through information, especially in those adolescent years.
The other thing that wasn't in when you started as a patrolman was gambling.
Right.
That's another thing that's now legal. Supreme Court made a decision that gambling will be allowed. And what do you think of that? I mean, as a police officer.
I think people have the right to choose, especially you can gamble now on your devices.
Yeah.
I think you just have to be careful, set your own limits, don't overextend yourself.
There are problems like that.
Oh yeah,
I mean,
I just think a lot of common sense goes a long way with these things, and just know your limitations. But I think it's something that you can enjoy as long as you're just mindful.
yeah. Sometimes that leads to domestic violence because the person is spending money on gambling, and it causes problems and a family.
Finances are stretched because of an addiction like that. Yes.
It is an addiction,
Yeah.
isn't it?
Yeah, so that's why I know a lot of these sites that are offering this availability also advertise these counseling.
I'm sick and tired of those advertising.
They're all over the place.
Yeah, all over the place. I knew it was coming. I was in Philadelphia area, and they have gambling. 50% of the ads on TV were gambling.
Really?
It was despicable.
Wow. That's a lot.
I mean, would you like to see gambling come to Chelmsford for revenue purposes?
That's a good one, Dean.
Okay.
I think where we are now, with people having the option to do it at their leisure, at home and whatnot on their devices, is a good step.
Yeah.
As far as actual buildings and facilities to do this, I don't know. That might be a good question for town meeting.
Yeah, pass it off to town meeting, right? Yeah, I like that one. No, I mean, the gambling is very serious, and there are problems. And I know every time they announce as an 800 number that you could call, because people do have a serious problem.
Yeah, it can develop, that's for sure.
Yeah, so be careful out there, please. I'd like to ask you, regards to how many officers do you now have on the Chelmsford Police Department?
Yeah, so we're in a little bit of a flux because we hire ahead of time when we foresee departures. So we have 56 officers, that's top to bottom.
Okay.
And the reason we kind of preemptively hire is it takes a year to get an officer hired through the police academy and trained, and then there's 2 or 3 months of field training, so before they're able to go on the road and be by themselves. So we have to anticipate officers exiting in order to keep the department at a proper level.
Yeah, proper,
Otherwise, you don't want to run low, extremely low. Right. So I foresee, in addition to myself, I foresee 2 or 3 retirements the end of this year, beginning of next year. So we're just in the process of hiring 4 officers right now.
Okay.
So.
What was I about to ask you in regards to police officers? They go through that training. What about civil service? Because are you having problems hiring police officers? And what about civil service? Is that going to change, or do you think it needs to change?
Well, civil service is obviously it's a statewide entity that controls the testing.
Right.
So if someone wants to get on the department, they have to take this state exam. So what we've been finding over the last couple of years are fewer and fewer candidates taking the exam. So our pool of individuals that want to become a Chelmsford officer have been reduced. We've been trying.
Why is that?
I just think.
Is it specific to the Chelmsford officer, or is it income? Is it
I think
salary?
it's nationwide. It's nationwide.
Okay.
Some of the optics with law enforcement over the last couple of years have been such a negative in nature that the desire to go into law enforcement has just dropped. I've been trying to hire an officer now for 6 months, and we've run out of candidates in Chelmsford. So now we reach out to other lists in other communities where people took the exam, but would maybe be willing to come to Chelmsford. So it's been a challenge.
Interesting. So so if there's anybody out there, please take the police exam. I don't know when it's coming up, but
It's going to be. There's usually one in the spring, every year in the spring.
okay. So in the spring of every year, take the police exam. You'll pass it. What about these veterans coming back from Iraq and Afghanistan? Are they applying for positions?
Yeah, but again, fewer. But the veterans get some points. They get veterans preference.
Preference, right.
So they'll go near the top.
Right.
Which is great for them. And no, I haven't seen a lot of them coming across recently either.
No kidding.
Yep.
I mean, when I got out of the military, everybody was going into the police.
Oh yeah, when I applied for this job, you'd walk into a room, there'd be 300 people in there taking an exam.
Huh.
Yep.
Wow. Okay. The other thing is, if you have police officers, you have vehicles. How many vehicles do you have in the Chelmsford?
So
roughly?
there's about 30 vehicles in the fleet, and that's marked and unmarked.
Why unmarked? Why?
So we have, the unmarked vehicles, there are some that are completely unmarked that the detectives use, and they use
Okay,
those.
that's understandable.
Yeah, so they use those for some surveillance, also if they go to someone's house to follow up, and it might be a sensitive issue. Sometimes people are sensitive to a marked unit being in front of your house because your neighbors see what's going on. Then we have semi-marked vehicles, which we have 3 of those, which are black, but they have the markings on them that you can see at night. And we use those. Those are good for speed enforcement. They're also good for patrolling the parking lots, especially around the holidays where they can be a little bit more discreet.
Oh, I see. Yeah, good point. Yeah.
And then there's the fully marked ones, obviously, which everybody's familiar with. We want the cruisers to be seen too, because they're obviously, if someone needs help or assistance, we want the cars to be readily visible.
There's a business phone number. Rather than people call 911, you want them to call this number, and I'm going to mention the number. So if you take a pen out, it's 978-256-2521. Put that in your phone. I mean, put that in your phone. If you have to call the Chelmsford Police Department, they'll pick up right away.
Yep.
It's no different than 911, but 911 is a special system that explains with 911.
It's supposed to be for strictly emergencies.
Emergencies, right.
And then depending on where you are when you dial 911 from your phone, the cell carrier is supposed to know the closest PD to you.
Oh, I see.
So if you're on the highway, it's supposed to bounce to the state police.
It's supposed to.
Right. Sometimes there can be glitches where if you're just close to another area, it can bounce. Actually, let me take that back. If you're on the highway and you dial 911, it's supposed to realize you're near Chelmsford, and it should bounce the 911 call to Chelmsford as well, because obviously time matters.
Right.
So,
another thing is, what do you think of granting licenses for alcohol beverages? I think there was a bill, 2017 or something like that, increasing the alcoholic beverages for like the amount of restaurants.
In other words, increase Chelmsford's pack. Yeah, I was not opposed to that as long as rules are adhered to, and state, local, and guidelines are followed. I went to the select board meeting and I expressed that fact that I didn't feel it was my place to oppose in addition to that, as long as they follow the guidelines.
Okay. The misconception of the younger people in town is that the police stop you to give you a ticket for revenue purposes.
Right.
That's not actually true.
No, so we have no quota.
Okay.
Here in
That's
town.
good to know. No quota. I just want to let you know there's no quota out there. That's very important.
And as a matter of fact, I think 2-to-1 warnings. I run the stats every year. Warnings far exceed money citations. Again, the stop is just all about safety, stopping the violation, having a productive conversation with the violator, and hopefully they drive off realizing that what they did was wrong, and then they won't do it again. It's not about money. Obviously, there's a place for a money ticket if you have someone pulled over that's a repeat offender, and the warnings don't seem to be getting the message across.
How would you know that?
Because we can run them. So when the officer can run someone's license, your driver's license, there's a motor vehicle history there. So they'd be able to say, oh, he was stopped for speeding 2 weeks ago.
Oh, well,
this is his
habitual.
third offense.
Yeah, that's a habitual person.
So when something like that, and obviously a warning's not creating the correction you're hoping for, sometimes citations.
I could tell cars that habitual violators. They'll roll through a stop sign, and then you go up farther, and they won't adhere to their rules. They have their own rules, so to speak. I mean, I could tell by the driver. I mean,
and that's how
that they're going to speed. They're going to go through a stop sign, roll through a stop sign, and keep on going, and not adhere to traffic rules.
All right, and that's just a safety problem for everybody.
Yep. School speed zones, my complaint, right? Explain what blinking yellow lights are in the school speed zone. When you see the flashing, because I don't think a lot of people who come from different countries who have licenses understand that yellow lights.
Yeah, so school zones are safety zones, and that 20-mile-an-hour zone is because of student safety. So obviously we put the amber lights on those signs to really try to grab people's attention. And what we try to do is daily the officers try to hit the school zones, especially earlier in the school year and whatnot. They really try to hit it heavy. But throughout the year, they do pretty regular enforcement. But yeah, those lights should grab your attention, and you're starting to see those lights pop up now, even on other roads. Just speed warning.
Oh, is that
like
right?
On Main Street,
okay,
and other streets, that's starting to become a popular thing. Some of our chronic roads that have speeding problems, we put these warning lights up, much like the school ones, to get people's attention to slow down.
I've noticed that some stop signs, there are lights around the stop signs.
Yeah, so
the
that
solar battery powered. Explain that.
Yeah, so Graniteville Road at School Street, that was we've had a number of accidents at that intersection. So the neighborhood was concerned, we were concerned. So we got together as a traffic committee and had those 4 signs installed. They blink all the time, 24/7 with solar power.
Right.
Just one more way to grab your attention.
Has it helped?
Yes, we haven't had another serious one out there. So.
Wow, good. I think you do a good job in regards to accidents. I mean, I haven't heard in Chelmsford community of young children getting in serious car accidents here that they've lost their lives. I mean, that's changed quite a bit since you've been on.
Yeah, the safety, the outreach, the public information things we push out. I think the signage has come a long way. The lighting's come a long way. Safety in vehicles have come a long way. Detecting pedestrians and speed and whatnot. Lane keeping systems on vehicles now have come a long way. So I think the combination of that's really helped.
Has that helped Drum Hill?
Well,
or do you still have your problems?
Drum Hill is just a volume problem. That's the problem. The lights close together like they are really bottles things up, especially when you're coming off the highway and you take a right to go towards Lowell. That really bottlenecks.
Yeah, I saw a guy with a Florida plate. He didn't get the arrows, the red arrows and stuff. He went right through the red.
He took a right on red?
Yeah, he didn't. He just rolled through it. He saw the arrows and it was red.
We do get that on the Drum Hill Square. People think the solid red, even though it's pointing to the left, if they look and it's clear, they think they can go. We do occasionally see that.
Is there a sign saying that you can't go?
Well, it's a left red, which you can never go. But some people think it's almost like a right on red after you stop. But that's certainly not the case.
I see. Well, be careful on Drum Hill. There are cruisers there. You do have cruisers there that.
Oh yeah, they're there every day.
They're there every day.
There's 2 areas that split up Drum Hill, so there's a patrol car always around Drum Hill, pretty much.
Okay, it's
busy.
Yeah, it's busy. It's a great area. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, Drum Hill is really the last gas station and eatery if you're going north to New Hampshire. You know, a lot of people stop there, meet their friends, and then go skiing up Route 3. And we don't take advantage of Drum Hill, I think, as a location to use.
it's like more restaurants, you mean,
Yeah,
or something? Oh.
or come and, yeah, I know, take a restaurant out and put a bank in. That's an inside joke. But, yeah, I mean, and coming back, I mean, people, you know, if the traffic's bad in regards to skiing that weekend, or some people can stop at Drum Hill and eat there or get their Five Guys or whatever they get, you know, there. How did COVID-19, speaking of COVID-19, I'm coughing a little bit. How did COVID-19 affect the department?
So, you know, we even to this day still have officers going out. It's much, much less. But the first few months, we actually changed our shifts around. We had the officers work longer tours of duty, but have more days off, so they could be less exposed. That was really during that unknown time when we just didn't know what we were dealing with.
Right.
But we had a few bad months there where we had 6, 7 officers out at a time.
Wow.
That was another reason why we changed the shifts. We had more officers on each shift, so if a number of them became ill, the shifts could still function. But yeah, I know the police and fire both had you know, pretty consistent outages of officers. But then as they kind of shortened the return time, it got easier. You know, it went from 14 days, then pretty much to 7. And you know, now I think it's, you know, as long as you're out 5 days and you're not exhibiting any symptoms, you can come back.
Right.
So it's gotten much better. But that first, 2020, 2021 was challenging because the officers still had to interact with people. We still had to arrest people. We had to go into people's houses for disturbances.
Yeah,
so there was no way to social distance.
Yeah.
Like everybody else, there was a social distancing option. The officers couldn't do that. They had to still go to the calls. They had to touch people. You know, they had the PPE, but still, that only goes so far.
Yeah.
You know,
and you can't approach a police officer in those days you know, he's in the cruiser and you go up to him and talk to him about some situation and he wants you to step back.
Yeah, there was definitely times the officer would be like, okay, what do you need?
Yeah.
Yeah, so obviously we're in a much better place, but it's still, you know, it's still in the back of your mind.
Yeah, oh no, I mean, you know, we're not going to forget it. I mean, because it could happen any time again.
Yeah.
And regrettably, you know, we'll do. Is there anything you want to say? I have 2 minutes. Is there anything you want to say about the Chelmsford Police Department, or Chelmsford neighborhood, or Chelmsford community?
Yeah, I think the community's doing well. We have a ton of outreach programs going on now at the department. More to come on that as the summer goes, but we're going to be doing a youth police academy.
Okay.
So
now, how do tell somebody how they can get their child in the police academy?
Yeah, so our Police Athletic League handles that, so they can just call the main number, ask for the PAL office.
Yeah, the main number is 978-256-2521.
That's right, and we have one of our Sergeant Nick Saminsky. He helps out with that program, as Officer Buckley, Officer O'Keefe, with a number of officers. Officer Rokas, one of the school resource officers, Officer Sullivan, he's the school resource officer at the Parker.
How long is the program?
Officer Tyros at the high school. I think it runs a week, and it's either a week or 2. We just started it last year.
Yeah, I remember.
And we're going to try to do 2 of them this summer for 2 different age groups.
Cool.
Middle school kids and then a little bit younger. Because last year we combined them, and the age difference made it hard.
Maybe Diane could put you on the news so that people will know.
Oh, we'll push that out, definitely, between you guys, between telemedia and Facebook and Twitter. Yeah, we'll get the word out. But between that and the Police Athletic League's movie night and whatnot, a lot of outreach coming. Look forward to working with the community.
You know, I mean, Chief, I just want to thank you for your civic duty. You did a great job. It was nice knowing you. Maybe we could have coffee someday. And I'm not a golf player, so. Thanks for coming on the show. And, good luck to you.